find the internet about once a week. Well, good evening, everybody. This is Brendan Baylod from the Great Lakes Shipwreck Research Group. I'd like to welcome everybody to tonight's episode of Great Lakes Shipwrecks Live. This is our 27th episode of Great Lakes Shipwrecks Live. And we have a guest on tonight that I've wanted to have on the show for quite some time. Becky Kagan Schott. So we are going to give it a few minutes for people to join, and we will do some housekeeping, and then we'll dive in, no pun intended, well, yes, it's intended, into our episode. So if you're joining, feel free to make some comments to let us know you're there. We've had some people who have reported that they've had trouble getting the show to play on the group when they're in the group. And a couple of suggestions I have for people. If you want to watch the show, you just have to go to the page where people post, and it should just start playing on the hour. You should get a warning saying, hey, Brendan Baylod is going live, or something like that. If you don't, just refresh your browser. That should trigger it to start playing. If that doesn't work, you may want to check out what browser you're using. I think Google Chrome works best. You might want to try downloading that. So looks like we've got some people joining. So welcome everybody to our broadcast for the night. Looks like we've got a quorum, so I'll start with the housekeeping. A couple of things to note. This is our 27th episode of Great Lakes Shipwrecks Live. I've been doing this for about 2 years now. I usually take a hiatus in the summer because Great Lakes Shipwreck people usually are out in the field in the summer, and so people aren't always available during the week to watch. So I generally do that around April, mid-April, late April. I generally stop. So keep that in mind that we will have our summer hiatus. But before our summer hiatus, we've got a few guests. Our guest next week, if you can remember way back to our first episode, was my first guest ever, and that's my good friend Rick Mixter. Rick and I are both Yoopers, and we both have done quite a bit up there, and we've got some projects planned for together. But I asked Rick to come on because he has an excellent new book called Bottled Goodbyes, and it's about Great Lakes shipwrecks where there were messages in a bottle. And there are a lot of them, way more than you'd think. And Rick is a really good storyteller, as everybody knows. So really looking forward to next week to having Rick Mixter on the show. The week after that, we have another old friend of mine from years gone by, and that is Carrie Soden. Carrie is an underwater archaeologist and has been for many years for the National Museum of the Great Lakes in Toledo. And before that, it was, of course, the Great Lakes Historical Society and the Great Lakes Historical Museum. They used to be in Vermilion. She is the archaeologist for the Peachman Shipwreck Center there, and has been now diving and documenting Great Lakes shipwrecks for many years. And so I'm really excited to have Carrie on the show in 2 weeks. So you won't want to miss it. All right. I think that's all the housekeeping I have. So without further ado, welcome, Becky Kagan Schott.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for being on the show. So usually I know the people that come on the show pretty well. This is a case where I didn't know Becky. I had seen her work for many, many years. And, we all remember back in the day before the muscles, right? When you dive and if you were photographing a shipwreck, man, getting about 2 feet away from it with lots and lots of light. And, you have to do a little bit of interpretation of what that large green blob is in front of you, And so, people had cameras on the Great Lakes, but they weren't really an exciting thing. And most of us, would get really close up to an artifact and you'd see a picture of a steam whistle or something like that. And a rare occasion you get up to Lake Superior, you might get a 20 or 30 foot vista, Well, when I first started to see Becky's work, I was just blown away. I was like, my God, how I'd never, these were shipwrecks I'd seen all my life. And it was as if I had never seen them before. And so, I followed her work pretty closely. And when I was thinking about, who should I have on the show that's doing really innovative things, She came to mind because I don't see anybody else that takes pictures like this. So Becky, for most of you, who know her, she's won 5 Emmy Awards. This is not a hobby thing for her. She does this for a living. So, she does extreme underwater exploration all over the world, and she's right here on the Great Lakes. And so we have kind of a national treasure here on the Great Lakes. And I'm so privileged to have you on the show. So thank you again.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do get to travel all over the world, and the Great Lakes are my absolute #1 favorite place to dive and shoot. So it's exciting.
Very cool. So one of the things I ask all our guests, because, really the show is about people. It's about getting to know people, not so much. It's not about presentations. We don't do presentations. It's an interview show. It's kind of who's doing cool and innovative stuff. So Becky, tell us a little bit about, how did you get interested in Great Lakes shipwrecks, which is sort of an oddball thing. Not many people even know about it, and then you didn't just get interested in it, but you made it a passion of yours that spawned a professional career that you decided to dedicate your life to. Tell us how that happened.
Ooh, I mean, that's a lot, right? I started diving when I was 12 years old, and I got certified in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So it was not warm water to start out with. Like, I started my diving in cold quarries, and I did my advanced in Lake Erie. So, that was about, 26 years ago. So I got introduced to the Great Lakes really quickly in my diving career. But my first thought was, ooh, this is why they call it Lake Erie. I'm not a fan, but I was also 12 years old, and I really got into diving because I wanted to see fish and sharks and marine life. So when I was 13, we left Pennsylvania and moved to Florida, and that opened up just worlds of possibilities for me down there. I haven't stopped diving ever since I got certified. I knew from the moment I took my first breaths underwater, this is my life. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do yet, like what part of it, if it's going to be science or teaching or photography, but I knew I was going to spend my life underwater, even from that young age, from being 12. So Florida opened up a lot of opportunities. I found myself, though, I was 15, 16 years old, and I couldn't afford to go out on boats, and I didn't even have a car to drive, out to get to some of these places. So I found myself in the Florida Springs quite a bit, and the springs lead into cave systems. And so here it is, I got into diving because I really liked marine life, and I found myself in caverns and eventually in caves when I was 16. And that's sort of about the same time I picked up a camera. It was film at the time. So yes, I did start shooting film, and I did learn how to develop film. And in high school, actually, we had a program that did that. So I picked up my film camera, and I took it into the caves, and I literally started shooting in the dark. And a lot of my photos were definitely not what you see today. They weren't, they just weren't pretty. They were rocks and fishtails, and, you're so excited to develop that roll of film, and, you get maybe one decent photo that's not blurry and lit well. But you know what, that really gave me, I learned from the beginning, I liked technical diving, and I liked challenges. And I didn't really know that about myself until I started kind of cave diving and taking a camera with me. And I didn't realize at the time how beneficial that would be to what I do today, because I had to learn a lot about lighting techniques, and and I also had to learn to be picky, because a lot of people that start with digital cameras nowadays, you have 4,000 pictures that you can take underwater. And I learned really quickly right off the bat, since I can't change my film, that I've got 27 exposures. So, I better make each one of them count. And so I still kind of hold that true today when I'm taking pictures underwater. So I became a scuba instructor when I was 18. I taught all the way for 10 years. I taught through college. And then I found myself wanting to explore deeper caves. And the only way to do that was to become a trimix diver. And so I went to South Florida, and I had to do it on the wrecks in South Florida, had to do it down there. So I kind of found myself reintroduced to wreck diving, because in Florida, a lot of the shipwrecks I was diving were more like rubble piles, bridge pilings, artificial wrecks, and they didn't really capture my attention, really. So when I did my trimix course and we were on real shipwrecks and the deeper ones with stories and more visuals, I really started falling in love with with Shipwrecks. And I kept shooting all along that time. I went to school for photojournalism, and I worked at the Florida Aquarium also through college. And I learned kind of quickly that I would really like to do underwater photography for a living, or underwater video, but I can't just walk into National Geographic and say, "Hi, I'm a good diver, hire me." It doesn't really work that way. At least it didn't used to. But so I talked to a lot of people, and they said they got their start in television news. So I got an internship at NBC in Tampa, and I picked up a giant 38-pound camera and started learning how to shoot on land. I learned lighting, interviewing techniques, live shots. I got to shoot a lot of hurricanes, which was interesting. Alligator and backyard pool, to eventually, I know that's Florida news, right? Yeah, the retirement communities want the palm trees pushed back 10 feet. That was news. But then I started covering presidential elections and a lot more kind of exciting news. But it taught me a lot about what I do today, because in news, you don't have a lot of time sometimes to get the shots, get the interviews, collect the video, make sure it's all shot perfectly, perfect, in a solid amount of time, and you're on a deadline. And when I find myself on underwater shipwrecks or in caves, I'm also on a deadline. We only have so much time to shoot and collect the images that we're there to get. And sometimes things go wrong, lights don't work or batteries die, and you have to think on the fly. And so working in TV news for about 6 years really gave me that, I would say, gave me that edge that I feel like I have now, because it was a lot of run and gun and think really quickly when things don't work, and how can I change this? And when we're down on shipwrecks, conditions aren't always what you imagine they might be. There might be currents, maybe it's pitch black and you thought it was going to be daylight. You have to really think on the fly and change your attitude for the dive quickly if you want to get some shots. So yeah, anyway, so sorry, long story short, I found myself when I was 26, I got certified on a rebreather, and I got my first job with Discovery Channel shooting in Truck Lagoon of all places. So here I am. Oh, I was actually, 25, 26 years old, and they're sending me to Truck Lagoon, a place that I would probably never be able to afford to go to myself at the time. And it blew my mind seeing these shipwrecks, shipwrecks inside of shipwrecks, tanks and bombs and tanks and guns, all these things. And when I came back, I met my now husband, and I moved back to Pennsylvania because he lived in Philadelphia, and I found myself kind of in this interesting position where we started our company, Liquid Productions, and I didn't really want to work in TV news anymore, and I was just starting to get hired on to work on different documentaries, and so I took the leap of faith and said, well, this may work. I can always go back to news if it doesn't work out. And we started our company, and I haven't looked back since. That was 14 years ago. So.
Wow. What an adventure. What a journey you've been on, Becky.
Yeah.
I know you've got some excellent pictures that you're going to be sharing tonight. Why don't we get those queued up, and we can talk a little bit more about some of the other things that you've done.
Absolutely. Give me 1 second. I will pull up. Okay.
And here they come.
Yes, share. And I'm going to share the whole presentation here. So then when I moved back up here, I went up to Isle Royale, and absolutely, that was sort of where I got rid of that my Lake Erie, that I didn't like the Great Lakes. So I went on this trip. I was working with Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution and the National Park Service, and they sent me to Isle Royale. And one look inside the Emperor and seeing those bunk rooms, my jaw dropped. And that's sort of what hooked me back into the Great Lakes. And then shortly after that, we went to Lake Huron, and we were working with NOAA down there, and also Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution on a project called Project Ship Hunt, a documentary actually. And we jumped in the water, and it was May, so it was really cold, and it was Caribbean blue, even though it didn't feel like the Caribbean. And I just looked around, and I was like, this isn't what I remember the Great Lakes being. And basically it sparked this interest for the last 10, 11 years, and you can't get me away from it.
I bet not. So Becky, this is what you do for a living now, and you've done some amazing stuff. Tell us about some of your higher profile work, that especially the stuff you've been doing recently. I mean, you've appeared all over the world.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we definitely, like you said, I specialize in shooting in extreme underwater environments, so shipwrecks, caves. I've been doing a lot in the polar regions lately, but I really, like I said, I started out cutting my teeth in shooting in caves, and I eventually did figure out the lighting, as you can see. But I've been the director of underwater photography for a lot of National Geographic documentaries like Maya Underworld. I've been director of underwater photography for Red Bull, another documentary called Crystal Labyrinth, where it's all cave exploration. So we've really started out doing a lot of cave exploration shows and all kinds of different reality shows like Bering Sea Gold Under the Ice for Discovery Channel. We've done NBC Today's Show with sharks and caves. I've worked a lot with NOAA, Woods Hole, National Park Service, Smithsonian. Up in the top corner there, you see a submarine or a submersible. And I've been out to the Bahamas a couple times shooting this sub for Ocean Gate, and that's going to go to the Titanic this summer. So it was really exciting to be a part of that and have Smithsonian Magazine send me out there to shoot the testing of this sub that's someday going to go to the Titanic. I work for a bunch of different magazines, so I'm always working on different articles and things like that. I've even done things like Flex Seal commercials. Maybe not as glamorous, but we've worked for Speedo. We've been doing projects on the USS Monitor and the U-869, so other well-known shipwrecks around the world as well. And maybe 2 years ago, some friends of ours discovered the USS Eagle in Maine in about 270 feet of water. And so we were up there shooting for Smithsonian Channel as well. So, we shoot really a range of things from marine life, and these end up either in magazines or a lot of our work is documentary. And my most recent project is working with Seiko USA with their new line of ice diving watches. So we've got a lot of projects lined up coming up this year, which is really exciting. We couldn't get to Antarctica this month, so we ended up back in Michigan, and we shot some really exciting under the ice stuff in Michigan for their watch campaigns. So we're always up to something interesting. It's not a boring job. Let me put it that way.
And it sounds like there's a lot of travel. Like, I mean, I think you told me even tonight you're having to leave right away to go somewhere. This is something that really keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, we just got back maybe a week or a week and a half ago, and yeah, we head to Florida next. And I mean, this is in a still kind of COVID times, right? And we're still staying fairly busy. But in a normal year, I travel to 6 continents, both poles, and maybe 3 out of 5 Great Lakes or something like that. So I definitely have a lot of things happening. It's been kind of nice lately just to catch my breath, but we're always shooting somewhere, and some of these places are not easy to get to logistically.
I'll bet. So one of the things that really intrigued me when we're talking about what you do is the amount of preparation that you actually do before you go on a wreck. So back in the day when I would dive wrecks, all I ever did was, I brought a camera with me, went down there the dang thing was, and you pointed at it and hope that you got it in frame. And, maybe put another diver in there for some scale, and you'd have to get real close up to it, of course, And when you were telling me about, sort of the research that you do and the preparation that you do, it helped me to understand a lot better how you get these just surreal shots. Tell us a little bit about that. And you don't have to give away all the professional secrets, but I told the audience that you drop a couple.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we were chatting ahead of time, you said something that definitely is true. Like, I'm not just trying to document wrecks, even though I will. I'm trying to make a piece of art and something really visually eye-catching. And I'm constantly evolving and trying different techniques and then pushing my own creative limits. Because some of these I dive over and over again, and I'm always trying to see like what I can do, creatively to push my own boundaries. And for me, I like to try to bring a shipwreck to life, and that's what I'm trying to accomplish with any of these pictures. And in order to do that, in order to bring it to life, I can't just jump in blind. I can't just say, oh, we're going to go dive this wreck, and know nothing about it. I've got to be, I usually do a lot of research ahead of time. I try to find out as much as I can about the shipwreck. Was there loss of life? Where was the wreck hit? What kind of condition is it in today? And a lot of these don't have very many pictures of them. I mean, this is a well-known wreck, but there's a lot of wrecks that I dive that don't have very many photos or videos taken on them. But if there are, I try to watch photos and videos of those wrecks, even if they're GoPro videos, just to get an idea of the wreck before I dive it. So I almost can dive it in my head before I'm even there. That really helps me because, again, I want to tell the story not through 300 photos, but maybe through 1 to 5 photos. I want to be able to visually tell that story, or try to capture it really nicely in just one photo that's going to catch somebody's attention, and they're going to go, wow, what's that wreck? I want to find out more about it. And again, so like we've got the Windiot on the right. That's a pretty well-known wreck, but I try to use the diver in there for scale and also to help illuminate a really nice feature on the wreck. And that was all planned like that. We jumped in the water and we didn't just say, hey, let's wing it and go dive the Windiot. No, we went in and, I said, this is where you're going to be. This is your body position. This is where I want you to put the lights, and look up at me every so often. You're probably going to hear me screaming on my rebreather if I need you to move. But I work really closely with my models because they're a big part of the pictures I take. They can make or break a photo. I'm also really into doing interior shots. I really like engine rooms or places that are very rarely seen. And we're going to talk about rebreathers in a little bit, but the rebreathers are really helpful because when we go inside these places, we're not stirring things up or hopefully damaging anything, with the bubbles or percolation. But like this is the engine room inside the Norman. And, I wanted to kind of get like a wide shot because I'd only ever seen pictures of divers next to the telegraph in the back. And I'm like, all right. And then when I went in there and saw it for myself, I went, oh, I want to kind of get the bigger picture here. So that's usually my goal. I do usually work with a team of people. It can be 1 to 5 divers, and we coordinate the dives typically so that, again, we're going down with maybe one shot in mind. And a lot of these wrecks are in the 160 to 200 foot depth range. So, we have 25 to 45 minutes to get the shot, but sometimes it will take me about 15 to 20 minutes. Like this particular one took me about 17 minutes, I want to say, just to get this shot, to get the angle, to get the divers where I kind of wanted the divers. So I'm sometimes I don't see any other parts of the wreck. I'll go down and I have a shot in mind, and I'm not even swimming around the whole wreck. I just get the one image that I sort of picture in my head before I even go. And again, it's all about storytelling. It's how can I best tell the story, visually. This is a ferry that was being towed. It's actually next to another ferry in Lake Huron, and it's still attached by the tow ropes. So for this particular image, it was really important for me to get those tow ropes in or the tow line in the shot. And it kind of makes a really cool visual effect as well.
Well, the role of lighting in here is just crucial. And that's one of the things that really is striking about your work. You see this diver casting this triangular beam onto these objects as though they're discovering it for the first time. It's really stunning, and of course the three-dimensionality that you get in this shot is amazing too. And I think this is the kind of thing that will help a lot more people become aware of shipwrecks on the Great Lakes, because I think that was one of the problems that's always been a hard sell, because like you found when you were a teenager on Lake Erie, the wrecks were kind of dark and dim. So you talked about the role that rebreathers play, and I know when you go into tight places, and even when I've dived in the past, in the old days, bubbles were everywhere and silt was everywhere, and boy, I don't see any silt at all or any bubbles. Tell us about the role rebreathers play.
Oh, rebreathers play such a huge role in the photography that we do. First of all, it's time. It allows us to spend so much more time underwater and really focus on the shots I want to get. So, for instance, a lot of these are somewhat deeper shipwrecks. And if I'm down there on the rebreather, granted, we do have a certain amount of time that we can spend due to the amount of bailout gas or emergency gas that we're carrying. But I mean, I can easily spend 45 minutes at 200 feet with the amount of bailout gas that I have, or even longer, even up to an hour if I want to. And where that is that if I don't quite have the shot I'm looking for, or my model wasn't quite in the right position, it gives us time to move things around, and that's everything, because that means I don't have to come back, I don't have to do another dive, or if conditions are just beautiful that day, we can spend 5-10 more minutes on the wreck and get more images. So rebreathers, I mean, they granted, to what a lot of people think is, oh, it's a lot lighter than a set of doubles, and they are lighter than doubles, but you're actually carrying more gear with you because you have to carry the bailout gas. And then on top of that, we're carrying, if you're spending longer times underwater, you're usually using some kind of heated undergarment or heated vest. And then of course, all the lights and strobes that we've got clipped off to ourselves. So we're actually carrying a lot more gear. But instead of breathing one mixture, the rebreather is a perfect blending machine. So it mixes the perfect mix for you at every depth. So it's really great for decompression as well. And then for even like shallower wrecks, like this is the Cedarville, so it's only 100 feet of water, right? But we can go down and spend an hour at 100 feet easily on the rebreather and maybe have less than 10 minutes of decompression because it's blending you that perfect mix. The other nice thing is you can see in this shot, the diver's underneath the wreck, and none of his bubbles are messing up the visibility or hitting the wreck and creating any silts. So that's huge. Personally, I also feel safer on a rebreather because we have a lot more time. So if you got entangled or silted out in engine room or something like that, you have a lot more time. I typically have a safety diver with me, which a lot of people don't know because they never see that kind of behind the scenes stuff sometimes. But a lot of, especially the interior stuff or the deep dives that I do, because I'm focused on the camera and I am very focused on my rebreather. I'm always watching my PO2s, watching where everything is, but there's a lot of things going on and you do have to really be on top of the rebreather. So I'm not a big fan of solo diving, and sometimes even though I'm diving with buddies, they're focused on other things or lighting what I'm telling them to light. So a lot of times I just have somebody who's just there to hang out with me and just have my back just in case something goes wrong, because in the 14 years I've been diving rebreathers, I've certainly had my handful of problems and issues, and things go wrong. You're using electronics underwater, so I have to be prepared to drop the camera or hand off the camera to somebody and fix those problems if they come up. But generally, I feel safer diving the rebreather because it gives us a lot more time underwater.
That makes a lot of sense. It was something that I never had the opportunity to, well, I shouldn't say it. I probably could have, but I'm kind of a shallow water diver these days myself. But it always fascinated me that you can actually breathe what you're exhaling gets recycled back, and so that air that you're exhaling is some of it's still usable, so it's getting recycled back into the rebreather system. I think that's why they call it closed circuit, correct?
You're right on. It's basically a recycling system, and with every exhalation, you're only metabolizing 4 or 5% oxygen. So it's recapturing that, and then through electronics, injecting. You have it set, and it's going to inject a certain amount of oxygen to maintain the partial pressure of oxygen that you want for the dive. And what's really exciting about that is, I mean, we're diving. These are 3-liter tanks, so they're steel 23 cubic foot tanks. And you may only use 500 psi out of a 23 cubic foot tank on a dive.
Wow.
And for trimix, anyone who dives trimix knows that, I mean, filling a set of doubles might cost you $200 or more. It depends on the price of helium. Well, we're only filling 23 cubic feet, and then we're only using maybe 1,000 psi on a dive. So it may only cost you, $10, $15, $20 to fill that small tank. So the rebreather isn't cheap to begin with, but in the long run, if you do a lot of diving, it definitely pays for itself.
That's interesting. I never knew that. I never thought about it that way, actually. And probably because I'm just such an old school diver, but that makes a lot of sense. To my way of thinking. But so one of the things that I know you and I have in common is I'm a photographer. I'm quite into it. I have had kind of a string of different DSLR cameras, and thinking about maybe getting a mirrorless camera, although I do most of my photography above water nowadays. What kind of equipment are you using? Some of these shots are just stunning. I have to imagine that it must be some pretty cool equipment. And obviously the lighting that you're achieving is amazing. Tell us a little bit about some of the equipment that you need to have to get these shots.
Sure. I mean, I definitely first and foremost think that it's the photographer. Any good photographer can get a good shot with the equipment that they're given. And I mean, like I started out with film, and then 4 megapixel cameras with one strobe for years and years, and added a second strobe. And I kind of learned to shoot with minimal amounts of equipment. Definitely not what I have today, and definitely not the caliber that I have today. But I definitely love cameras, and I could talk about cameras and rebreathers and gear. Like I'll dork out on that like all day long. But I love cameras, and maybe too much. I'm even looking at some new equipment now, and I shouldn't be. But I have a lot of different cameras. Let's put it that way. But I get a really good excuse because I do this for a living, right? So that's my excuse. I need this for work. At least that's what I tell my husband. But yeah, so for a lot of our documentaries, we're using a Red Epic Dragon, which is a 6K RAW camera. So really, really powerful camera system. Typically, I'm not using this out in the Great Lakes because it's about 75, 80 pounds. And then by the time you add everything to it, it's quite a camera system. And it's in the range of somewhere in the $70,000 range. So I try to use this for basically just our documentaries and things like that. But we can connect comms into it and use full face masks for audio. We can do live feeds to the surface, which is really exciting, and we've done that on several shows. I also use for the more normal camera. I am currently using two D850s, Nikon D850s in aquatic housings, and all different lenses. It just depends on the dive. I mean, typically in the Great Lakes, you want to shoot fisheye or some kind of wide angle lens, unless you're going after like something really, really unique, like artifact wise. But so I'm typically shooting wide angle, and I change up my lenses actually because when I started out shooting, I was using a fisheye lens. But then when I started shooting with some of the archaeologists that I've worked with in the past, and on some of these schooners, the fisheye lenses bend the masts, and that really, really bothers me. So on a lot of schooners, I'm usually shooting like a rectilinear lens, just so the lines are straight and it's accurate. Or if I'm doing work with any kind of archaeologist, I'm usually shooting the rectilinear, not the fisheye lens, just for more of a real feel. And then I go back and forth with lighting. I use both strobes and video lights. It just depends on the dive, depends what we're doing. I love strobes. I think strobes still penetrate further in the water than video lights ever will. They have a certain look to them, but they also can be very finicky. So in the Great Lakes, I tend to use more video lights because of the time and the cold water, and we don't really get a whole lot of time. So video lights, I can see my shot before I shoot it. So I prefer that. Plus, my buddies can see exactly where I am if my video lights are on, which is nice. And I have the opportunity to flip back and forth with these good cameras now. I can shoot a little bit of video, or I can shoot some stills. So I tend to shoot more video lights these days, unless I'm like in a cave. Then I tend to shoot more strobes, just so I'm not blinding my buddy all the time. But yeah, I mean, everything I do, I'm thinking about the lighting. And sometimes I don't use anything at all. Sometimes I'll look at the wreck and go, you know what? It's at least the way I think of shipwrecks, it's all about the shipwreck. The model or the diver is just a prop to show scale. I don't want my shots to be about the diver, even though they're there. I want to show just the beauty of these wrecks. So sometimes overlighting can be a problem. I've seen a few people emulate what I'm doing, and I just sort of shake my head sometimes and go, oh, you don't get it. Just because you have 5 or 6 video lights doesn't mean you should use them. Like they overlight it, and then it completely takes away from the shipwreck, in my opinion. And again, it's a personal style, and it's taken a long time for me to develop my personal style. And every photographer should kind of find their own style as well. And again, mine is showing off the shipwreck. What's going to bring this to life? What's going to show it in the most positive way, or bring something to life in this photo?
It's interesting to me that shipwrecks. they all have this sort of haunted house sort of vibe to them. And you do a really nice job of capturing that, I think, with the, like you say, the not overlighting. I'm curious, these lenses that you're using, the wide angle lenses, you're shooting often in a lower light environment. Are these things a pretty, low f-stop, like a f1.2 type of thing? Or what are these lenses like in terms of the amount of light they let through?
I'm all of my lenses are 2.8, so I would love to have one with lower than that, but no, they're all 2.8. But I actually never shoot lower than a 6.3 or 7.1 f-stop.
Yeah.
I never shoot lower. That's like permanently on my camera. I do everything manually because I don't believe in the auto settings. I just can't do it. But just can't do it unless I'm shooting marine life. Okay, that's fine. I'll do shutter priority. But everything in the Great Lakes is, I get down. I do a couple test shots because every you could dive the same wreck 5 days in a row, and the lighting changes. The conditions can change. Everything changes. So I get down, and the first thing I do is a couple test shots, and then I kind of dial in my settings. But and of course, every camera is different settings wise. That's usually people's favorite question is, what settings do you use? And it's like, well, do you use the same camera as me? Because if you do, then that might help you. But no, I'm typically, I find your shots get pretty blurry if you go below a 6.3. So I'm usually at a 7.1. And then these cameras can really handle higher ISOs now. So, and every camera again is different. When I get a new one, I'll go down and I'll do different test shots, usually in my local quarry, which is kind of similar to Great Lakes conditions. And I'll say, all right, here's 1,000 ISO. Now 1,500, 2,000, 2,500, 4,000. And I see what the limitations of the camera sensor is. And then I just don't go beyond that. So with one of my cameras, it was never beyond 1,200. Then the next camera, it was 1,600. Then the next camera, it was 2,500. And I still try not to go past 2,500 because I know some of these shots will probably be blown up or they'll be used in a bigger way. And they look great on your computer screen, but all of a sudden you blow them up and they'll be very, very grainy if you go beyond, certain ISO. So I try to keep it, in a certain range. But no, I feel these shots. Like when I get down on these wrecks, like, okay, this is one of the twin ferries. It has an okay story. I mean, there's no loss of life. It's nothing like kind of crazy, but I don't know. I just look at it and it feels so haunting to me, and it doesn't even look real. And like I said, when I grew up in Florida and I was diving shipwrecks and they're covered in all that coral and stuff, you don't really get to see the wreck. And here, like, I feel they feel so haunting. And I try to let that come through in my photography. Like how I feel when I'm there and I'm taking the shot and seeing it for myself is what I want the viewer to see and feel.
There are very few places in the world that have these sort of underwater abandoned places. And I know sort of the abandoned place sort of genre is really popular right now on YouTube. And this is really the ultimate abandoned place, these underwater shipwrecks. And in the Great Lakes, they look as if they sank yesterday. And so this is really an untapped resource in some ways. And you're, I think, one of at the forefront of really bringing these to a wider audience. So I think it's a really untapped audience in some ways. And I know one of the things that we're doing that's really expanding the audience and the opportunities to explore these wrecks is what we had last week when I had Ken Merriman on talking about photogrammetry. And I wonder, Becky, obviously, the wrecks you're shooting them in excellent resolution. Have you done photogrammetry of these wrecks? Because Ken was showing that, they can put on like virtual 3D headsets and in a museum, people can walk around inside the wreck, quite literally inside the three-dimensional, image. Tell us about any work you've done with photogrammetry on these wrecks.
Sure. Yeah, and I love the talk last week with Ken. He's one of my Great Lakes idols. um, just because he's always doing something new and innovative, and like always pushing, which is what I'm personally trying to do as well. Is always trying to push forward and think what's the next thing. And I am doing photogrammetry, and it's something I'd wanted to do for a long time. Because, like I said, I've done some work with NOAA and National Park Service, and I've known a bit about photogrammetry for the last 5 or so years, but I've always been more into the artistic side and wanting to either shoot video or stills artistically. And this past year with lockdown, I decided, all right, well, this is something I can do around my house and start learning how to do 3D models so that when I'm back in the water again, I'm ready to do some photogrammetry. So I did a lot in my local quarry, just kind of perfecting lighting techniques and doing interiors, exteriors, working in low visibility and good visibility, shallow, deep. I was doing it all. And then I did do some Great Lakes photogrammetry this past summer, but I didn't do anything deep. I did some more of the shallower recreational depth range wrecks. So this summer I would like to branch out more and do some of the deeper wrecks, because again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. Like, my whole mantra is bringing shipwrecks to life. And boy, there is no better way to bring them to life than have a 3D model of it. And I mean, be able to do a virtual dive, be able to document the wreck over and over again, see the wreck in its entirety. Because, okay, this is the Brig Sandusky, which everybody watching probably knows. And but do you ever get to see it in its entirety? You only get to see, maybe 30 to 50 foot portions of the shipwreck at any given time. So it's really neat to be able to see a shipwreck in its entirety, and then to see where it goes in the future and document these wrecks before they're gone, I guess. And then we've taken it one step further, where my husband, and he got a 3D printer, and he's been taking my photogrammetry models and actually making real life models of them. So
Wow.
this Sandusky is about 17 inches long, so it's about the biggest our printer can make. And it's really neat, the process. And we've been working with different materials, and it's actually, this one was harder than expected because of the bowsprit, and then the mast that's sort of laying off to the side there. They all need supports. So, we probably have like 30 Sandusky models sitting around our house that have all been like messed up in some way. Because, these take about 3 days to print. So, we've kind of been learning through trial and error, and figuring out what we need to do as these print. But this is sort of like taking it to the next step now, and being able to hold the shipwreck in your hands. And I think that's going to be a really great educational material too, whether it's in a museum or whether it's brought into a school, and kids could actually like see it or do a virtual dive on it. Well, actually, whether you're a kid or an adult, non-divers, I think this is a great way to bring non-divers into our world.
Boy, this is amazing. And I think the opportunities for, museum displays, not just, obviously the 3D models are just amazing, but then in addition to seeing the 3D model, you could say, okay, how would you like to go on a virtual dive, or how'd you like to stand inside the hold of this wreck? That's just stunning to me. This is stuff of course, 30 years ago when I was diving on shipwrecks, I never would have believed possible. And of course, I'm no longer a deep diver, so I'm probably one of those people that you are thinking of who would love to see one of these, but I probably can't, because I can't, dive below about, well, probably 60 feet anymore. So thank you so much, obviously, for doing this.
You're welcome. And these will be great, especially in lower visibility places. I mean, like lakes, I know you love Lake Superior, and I mean, photogrammetry is like the perfect place. Lake Superior is the perfect place to do photogrammetry, because you can only see so much of those shipwrecks, and with all the details, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm hoping to get up there. I'm going up to Isle Royale for 2 weeks this summer, so I'm hoping to shoot a little bit up there and just play.
We might run into each other. I'm going up to Isle Royale twice this summer too. I'm going up in June for my annual trip. I think it'll be my 25th trip to Isle Royale. And then again in September, conditions willing, to do an actual survey up there, some work and a search for a wreck. So should be fun. So there are obviously a lot of wrecks that you shot on the Great Lakes, and I've seen just some amazing images. And one of the things that I asked you to, if you would do for us, is to show, some of your favorite wrecks, not just in terms of their history, but the wrecks that were the most interesting to you and the most photogenic. So why don't you take some time and just take us on a tour of some of your greatest hits, Becky?
Thank you. Yeah, so when you asked me to like just name a couple wrecks off the top of my head, the sidewheel steamer Detroit is one that always just captures my imagination. And I mean, it's got an amazing story, and then visually to see a wooden sidewheel steamer intact from 1854. Well, it sank in 1854, but built in 1846. I find it amazing. And so this is one of my favorite wrecks to shoot. This one, for anyone who doesn't know where it is, it's off of Port Austin in the Thumb, so in Lake Huron. And I've tried to capture it in a lot of different ways over the years. So a lot of these shots that you see are different dives, because like I said, I go down a lot of times with one shot in mind, and that's the shot that we aim for. So a lot of these are different dives, but from just capturing one wheel to just capturing both of the side wheels. On this particular day, we had absolutely incredible visibility, and the visibility in this area I find can be really, it can range from really clear to kind of green to kind of blue, really dark. It can just be all over the place. So it's one that kind of keeps me on my toes, and I never quite know what I'm going to get when I go down. But this is the bow of the wreck, and to see those two anchors stowed there, wow, they're just beautiful. And obviously, this was a really good, crystal clear blue day, which I think this was the nicest day I've ever seen. We actually got down on the wreck, and I looked at my buddy and I thought, oh, we're definitely doing more time. And then after we surfaced, we were supposed to go somewhere else, like the Morrell bow. And I said, we should do a second dive on this, because I've never seen such good visibility on the wreck. So we ended up jumping back in and doing a second dive. But again, always just trying to find different features on the wreck. So here, it's very dark, it's around 210 feet deep. So it's very difficult to see the bottom of the wheel. So in this shot, I've got my buddy Yitka Hanakova, who I do a lot of diving with all over the lakes, lighting up the bottom of the wheel there. This was a really dark day. I mean, like, we got down and it looked like night. It was so dark. So the original plan that we had kind of like went out the window, and I'm like, all right, what are we going to do? So I had the divers sort of focus on the wheel, and I lit the wheel from underneath, again, just trying to show it in its entirety. But on dark days like this, you really depend on your models putting the lights in the right places. And when the visibility is, the viz is good, but it's just really dark, you're kind of pushing the limitations of your camera. Versus days like this. This was that amazing visibility day. So I actually backed up off of the wreck, and you can kind of see in the bottom of the frame. I never noticed this until this particular day, and I probably had a dozen dives on the wreck, that there's sort of a half moon circle thing on the bottom there. And I think that might be one of the wheel, one of the covers for the wheel, maybe just below the lake bottom there. So really beautiful day. And I mean, this was that same day I was starting my ascent off the wreck, and I looked down, and I'd just never seen it so blue and clear. And it makes it special, again, because you go and you just never know what you're going to get. So just because you've been on a wreck once doesn't mean that, especially photographing it, doesn't mean that the conditions aren't going to change. You're not going to get better conditions. Some of these I'll go spend 4 or 5 dives on, just looking for nice images.
Wow, that's really a stunning image.
Thank you. Thank you. And like this one, there's no need for light. I mean, there's no need to overlight it. It's about the wreck, and the visibility was so amazing. You can just see it, and anything else would have just taken away from it.
And for people who don't know, I mean, for 100 years, this wreck was an almost total pitch blackness. And it was only until the arrival of the mussels that this type of clarity on the Great Lakes became commonplace. Of course, it's why we don't have a sport fishing industry anymore on Lake Huron, but it's replaced it with the ability to see these kind of amazing views.
I mean, this is like going back in time. I mean, this is what captured, I mean, it sparks my imagination to go down. And I mean, it's like going back in history, going back in time and touching a piece of history, where it's just incredible. I mean, I hate to use this analogy, but I will. I mean, it's like Disneyland of wreck diving. When when you picture a wreck in your mind, and I don't know, you just picture this perfect shipwreck. That to me is what these look like, or these just perfect wrecks versus kind of a pile of wood, or again, just something that you have trouble making out. So another favorite is the Daniel J Morrell, and I've read. I mean, I'm probably the least experienced of all your people watching, but I mean, read all of Dennis Hale's books and his accounts, and the story just gives me chills. And for such a powerful story, you need powerful images to go along with it, to really showcase it. And his story just gives me chills. And when you go down and you see that bow, and you just see it sitting there like it's still sailing on top of the water, it's kind of freaky. It's haunting. And you know that 28 people lost their lives, and you can't imagine the violence. I can't imagine the violence that took this ship down and what it must have been like. And to just see it sitting there so peacefully on the bottom, yeah, I have no words. It's an incredible, just incredible wreck, to go and see, with such a powerful story. This is probably right in front of this is probably where the lifeboat was launched from. That first deck. When you go inside, you can still read, like, here it is. There's the laundry room, and there's still a washer, an old school washer in there. It was just kind of cool. So, and you've still got all that the paneling on the walls, and there's sinks and all kinds of things, still inside the wreck. And then swimming along the outside, when you get to that break, and the rest of the freighter's just gone, and you know that it's about 5 miles away. I mean, it just sends chills down your spine, like, to see this ripped up freighter. And so many people know the story of the Fitzgerald, and they're very attracted to the Fitzgerald. But here's the Morrell, and it's in 200 feet of water. It's in diveable depths, and you're able to go down and see it, and just kind of keep that story alive. So I find this wreck to be really powerful. So the stern, it's 5 miles away, and again, they've got the 2 lifeboats, which are on either side of the wreck. They're on the lake bottom, and again, I just find it haunting to know that nobody made it off on those boats, and here they are just sitting there next to the stern.
And that's a fairly modern wreck, 1966.
Yeah, very modern. When you go inside, it has one of the most haunting engine rooms I've ever seen. I mean, you've got the telegraph. That's a fire extinguisher right on the side there. There's no mussels inside, or very, very few, because there's no current. There's nothing for them to eat. So everything is very pristine when you go inside. You've got a tool bench in there. Unfortunately, some of the hammers have fallen down now. I think they've just rusted from past years. But you still have, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's still light bulbs screwed in. There's a fan. I mean, there's ladders in there that look like you could just pick them up, that they were just picked up from Home Depot and set inside the wreck. They just look brand new. And then above the workbench, this is one of my favorite things. I mean, because my dad used to do this, but there's nuts and bolts and screws just above the workbench in these tiny little jars. And it's crazy because, I mean, the violence that took this wreck down, and these jars and the light bulbs, all this stuff is still intact inside the engine room. And you can even still read the names and the jars. It says twist off, but some of them say peanut butter. You can still read that on these jars, and I can't help but think, like, this is where somebody was standing. Like, this is their work area. This is where they went to work every day. So it's a very, very haunting place. So one of my goals, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, was to get one image, just trying to show the overall view of the room. And so this was a very, very coordinated dive. I probably thought about it for a year in my head, going over every move, from hitting the surface, jumping in the water, to getting down the line, to dropping off. We left one of our, my safety diver and I left our 50% bottles just outside the the skylight, so we would be a little more nimble inside. But this is 205 feet deep, 38-degree water, and we don't have a whole lot of time. And like I said, I always take a safety diver with me. So he's actually, you can kind of see a little red light up in the corner. He was shooting with a GoPro, but up in the top left corner, he's kind of hanging out there, but that's my safety diver. Because we're inside a wreck, we're shooting, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So I set this up. It was probably like 6 or so lights, and then I only took about 5 shots. And by that time, it was time to leave. We spent about 25 minutes, and then headed out, and that was the dive. There's things I would always change, but I thought about it for a year, and I just wanted to show off kind of the room in its entirety.
Boy, it shows. It's just a mesmerizing shot. And to think that you're 205 feet down inside of that ship, I mean, I for one get claustrophobic, probably because I don't dive enough, but that's amazing to me that you were able to do that.
I posted this somewhere, and somebody, actually this has happened with quite a few of my shots, and somebody's like, I don't understand what the big deal is about this shot. And then somebody else went, well, it was 200 feet deep underwater. And they went, oh, that's underwater? I had no idea. That's happened with some of my Ganilda shots as well, where there's absolutely no divers in the shot. And they're like, I don't understand what the big deal is about this dusty old room. And you're like, well, it's 250 feet deep on a 100-year-old shipwreck. And then they're like, oh my God, that's underwater? I didn't know. Yeah. So, the internet, everybody has a comment. It's interesting.
Great story, Becky.
Speaking of the Ganilda, that is such so the Ganilda was a wreck. I saw Ken Merriman do a talk about it, I don't know, at one of the UMSAT shows, like, I don't know, 9 years ago or something, and 9 or 10 years ago. And my jaw dropped. It hit the floor. And I just said to myself, I'm diving that wreck. I don't even know where it is, but I'm diving it. And it took me quite a few years, and even though I was a very experienced diver, been to 400 feet, all these things, the Ganilda, it's in Upper Lake Superior. It's remote. It's 270 feet deep. It's very cold. There's no chambers around. You got to be solid to go dive that, right? So, we went up in 2017, and all the shots of the Ganilda I had seen were very close-up shots, like close-ups of the bell, close-ups of the name, the bow, which is all great, because it does do these wrecks justice, because the beautiful gold leafing on the bow is stunning, and there are a lot of details, and that's what's so amazing about Lake Superior, are the details that you still see without the mussels. But I really wanted to back up and try to get a wider shot of the wreck. Now this was at least 1 camera system ago, maybe 2, but I had to push my camera to its max abilities. But we had several divers, and I had a safety diver. Actually, Yitka was behind me as my safety diver on this one, doing a little filming too. And we had a couple divers just trying to light up the bow, just trying to get some wider perspectives of the Ganilda. And this is around 250 feet deep here, and obviously cold, pitch black, and there's a lot of snow in the water, or particulate. So that was a huge challenge. But even though that particulate was in the water, I found the visibility was still good, but any on-camera lighting would just completely blitz it out. So I was very dependent on my dive buddies to help light this and help capture these shots, like of the flying bridge with the telegraph and the wheel and the binnacle, and just show a bigger perspective of this gorgeous yacht. This is the other one that a lot of people don't know that it's underwater. But again, Ganilda, pitch black. There's no ambient light whatsoever. And we used about 30,000 lumens of light shining through the skylight. I had no lights on my camera at all, because I was just kind of sticking it through the window here and trying not to cut my dry suit on any of the broken glass. But it was only naturally lit, almost as if the sun was shining through that skylight. And I absolutely loved that. Like if light was pouring back into this room again for the first time, and you see the fireplace and the kind of the stained glass and everything. It's really pretty.
Amazing. I've seen pictures of the Ganilda for many, many years, and like you say, they're always, really, really close up. This is one of those wrecks, like I mentioned before. It's like the first time I've ever seen it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, we had some decent conditions. It's hard on the side of the wall there. It's shadowed. It can be very dark, and snowy. The water can be very snowy, but just we did a week straight on it. So, you're bound to, if you're focusing on certain shots, you're bound to come up with something good. This one, so there's a piano, as you know, inside the Ganilda, and that was the one thing in Karen Merriman's video that I saw that I just was like, oh my God, I need to see this piano with my own eyes. And something about photography that I haven't mentioned yet is, I mean, I'm always watching the Rebreather and focusing on so many things underwater, but the one thing that I also try to focus on is seeing it with my own eyes, because these are amazing places and we are very privileged to be able to go there, and it takes a lot of time and experience and money and everything building up to be able to go there. And so I've learned over the years that I need to make sure that I look with my own eyes and take it in. And to me, that's also how I can kind of convey it through the photo. Like if I look with my own eyes and I have this emotion and I see it and I go, holy crap, that's real. That's really there. And then I start taking pictures that comes through. But I mean, to see a piano inside of a shipwreck, it was really incredible. And the first dive that we did, I said immediately, I want to go to the piano. And we got there and I don't know, there was some silt, something happened. I think I had strobes on my camera and I silted it out as I was trying to get it through the tiny, tiny little windows. And I got the worst shot. It was so terrible. And I was so bummed because here it was, I'd waited 7 years to go up and to shoot this piano. And I got terrible, terrible shot. And again, luckily we spent, a whole week on the wreck. So I was able to go back and do it again. But yeah, it's amazing experience. I mean, I love photography. I love showing off these places. I love going back and just showcasing these beautiful gems that we have here in the Great Lakes, because a lot of people, they just don't know that they exist. A lot of people around the world, a lot of people even just here in the States, they go, the Great Lakes, there's shipwrecks. And my goal is always trying to get them into magazines or videos, documentaries, and just capturing people's imaginations.
Well, these Ganilda shots that you've shown here are some of the most iconic Great Lakes photos I've ever seen, and I think they will, really serve that purpose to attract people to the Great Lakes and help tell the story. So that really, your work is really important, and it's one of the reasons I'm so privileged to have you on the show. And it really means a lot to me to have the opportunity to interview you and to have you share a little bit about your background and how you got interested in this, and to walk us through your passion for Great Lakes shipwrecks. And I certainly learned a lot. So thank you so much, Becky, for coming on the show and doing the interview.
Well, thank you for having me. I love watching your show, and it's been great learning from so many different people that you've had on, because I'm still learning. I'm not a ship expert, but I love shooting them, and I love learning about them as I go, because there's so much to learn. There's so much to see.
So we're actually a little few minutes over, but I wanted to remind everybody that we have a Zoom room tonight, and you can meet Becky in person in bunny ears, because of course we're we're virtual. But Becky will be there. I posted a link to the Zoom room on the group, and we'll be in there at 8:30. Although I might get in a few minutes early. That is 9:30 Eastern time for our people out east. Also, this show will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube channel, be sure to do so. We put all our shows up there. We also have additional content and programming. Occasionally, I'll do an oddball video about some weird antiquarian Great Lakes thing and throw it up there. So please do join our YouTube channel if you haven't. And Becky, again, thank you so much. It's been a real privilege. And join us for the Zoom room. Good night, everybody.
Bye, everyone.